Hi, Pete. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. It is a beautiful morning. I want you to notice that I'm wearing a button-up shirt.
And you have a mustache, just a little baby mustache, but it still counts. It's a lovely mustache.
Mustache March.
Yes. Yes. My name is Taylor McCarrey. I'm a licensed mental health practitioner in the states of Texas and Washington. With me, as always, is Pete Kingsley, a licensed mental health practitioner in the states of Washington and Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Well, Idaho lapsed, but I was.
Oh, there you go. And then also a current PhD student at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Yes.
Yes. Pete, we were just talking. I am not looking forward to today's conversation.
In full vulnerability, Taylor and I both have experiences with like this topic.
Personal experiences.
Yes,
yeah.
and it's icky.
Yes.
So forgive us
Today we're talking about religious trauma, BT dubs.
Yeah. Religious trauma. And so forgive us if we like muck through this. I have the expectation that I will figure things out as I am talking about it.
I feel like I might as well. And just for, context and clarity where we are in our lives right now, Pete and I are both actively religious people, go to church every Sunday, say our prayers before bedtime, all that good stuff. But man alive, religion can really do a number on people.
It can ruin you. That truism that no one escapes childhood unscathed is sure true in terms of religion.
Yep.
But before we get into it, I wanted to acknowledge the supportive comments on YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram. Sometimes people listen to our stuff and they come out with these very profound, very supportive comments. Someone scrolling through our shorts and saw someone said, "Keep doing the work you're doing," and we can't communicate how supportive that is when we're like, "What the heck are we doing?" And then someone comes to us with like these deep thoughts, and people write us emails, and it's just amazing.
It's lovely.
Yeah, it's like we're coming along with people's thoughts, and it's a great thing. And then some people.
Sometimes people don't say nice things, and those ones make me laugh.
Yes.
So I'd like to read to you, if I may. I took a screenshot of it, and it made me so happy. If you follow us on Instagram, you already saw this. Someone posted this on a short, and the quote was, "Imagine being." Imagine being such a hopeless failure that you argue against self-control, which is.
It was a clip on stoicism.
Yeah, and questioning whether stoicism was toxic masculinity with a different name. Now, I'm going to own a little bit of a clickbaity title, but that's kind of the name of the game. But also, clearly this person didn't watch the thing, and clearly this person didn't listen to anything else we had to say about it. Also, this guy, I won't give the full username, but it has the word gooner in it. And there's something really special about somebody with a username that has the word gooner calling me a complete failure. Oh,
the shorts are meant to be a hook to get you to come watch the rest of the episode, not like to take completely out of context and write an insulting comment about.
Yeah, it really made me happy. And so what I did, I actually liked that comment, and so it's now the highlighted comment.
You loved it. You didn't just like it. You put a heart on it.
I loved it. That's right. So when people watch that short, they'll see that we, the owner of the clip, loved that comment so much that it's now the first thing you see when you see the clip. Amazing.
Way to hijack the narrative, Taylor. This is also a benefit of having two people on one podcast, because he and I can laugh about it, because I'm pretty sure if he was by himself, Taylor would just quit the podcast right now. That would just be it.
That's right. I'm a very soft, sensitive, weak,
exquisite vividness of each moment hits Taylor.
The most weak person ever.
So talking about religious trauma, maybe it's hard to uncover some of what my experience has been without making my parents seem really bad. And they're just doing their best. And so when I talk about religious trauma, it's a little T trauma. I don't stay up at night. I don't have traumatic symptoms. We're talking about maybe significant impact to our life. People with trauma, big T, like trauma, have.
And there are people, just so we're clear, there is big T trauma that happens because of religion. And Pete and I both talked. I was just telling Pete before some of my experiences with clients talking about big T trauma. And Pete's reaction to one of the stories was, "Oh my gosh, it can be real bad. It can be really bad,
very bad." So when I say like I've experienced a little taste of this, I do not mean that I was traumatized. I mean that I felt some of those feelings on like a 1 out of 10 level, maybe a 3 out of 10 level.
They're going to say 1 seems kind of low. So I think for the average non-big T trauma person who's been through religion, who's been hurt by it, or who has been changed by it in a negative way, as well as maybe positive ways, just so we're very open about this, we're talking about issues that pop up. And a big issue, for example, that pops up with a lot of people behind religion is like sex. Sex is a big religious trauma thing. I know a lot of people that I grew up with who got married and they waited till they got married to have sex, and they got married and they're like, well, my whole life I've been told not to do this, and now I can do it, and like I don't feel good with that, and it causes issues.
Yeah, that immediate switch is really difficult to navigate when you first get married. And for me, that was a big thing. Like, if they can forgive me, when I grew up, my parents had this book that was called The Miracle of Life. And it is a miracle. Love it. And the whole book was really cool. Had like photos of a baby growing. But the 2 pages that talked about actual conception were glued, stapled, and taped together.
Oh my gosh.
I was always so darn curious about what was in those pages. It burned in me as a little kid, like why those pages were stapled and taped together. And I'll admit that I may have undone some of the page. And so I opened it.
You horrible man.
I know, and I did feel bad as a little kid. You're like, what is in these pages? So you open it up, and it says when your parents are feeling very loving, this happens. Your dad does this, and your mom does this, and then this happens, and that's what causes fertilization, and a baby starts to grow. And I was like, oh, and it was as innocuous as they could make it. And I was like, oh, well, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But of course, I was also a troublesome teenager where I was pretty active, and I made my parents quite nervous because I always had a girlfriend, and I was always, staying late with girls. And so I made them pretty nervous about my activities. So I'm pretty sure they were kind of compensating for me.
I gotta give a shout out to my parents, because my flavor of religious trauma was not around sex at all. In fact, my parents, I wouldn't say they were like super open, in that they weren't like, check it out, kids, we're gonna make out and touch each other. That did not happen. But it was more like they were just open, like, yeah, we have sex. We enjoy sex. It's a healthy part of our marriage. They make little allusions. Like I remember one time, my mom's birthday, my dad was asking us our favorite memory of our mom. I said, well, Dad, what's your favorite memory? And I think he said seeing her with us kids and like raising us the way that she was, because he worked a lot. He was gone a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked and I was like, that's really your best memory? And he goes, well, that's the best one I can talk about at the dinner table. Okay.
That is honest. Way to go. That's pretty cool. My parents have loosened up through the ages. I think they, as we started to move out, that they started to make jokes. Oh, that was the big thing. You talked about the transition from like never being okay to all of a sudden being okay. I remember, constantly my mom would write me notes in my lunch because she's an awesome mom. And so when I opened my lunch, I'd see, she always wrote flea, like flea girls, FLEE, like flea. That was her thing. Just flea girls. And I was like, that was constantly growing up with girls. Get away from them. Don't talk to them. Just like girls. No. But in their defense, they let me have a girlfriend. This is convoluted. I'm sorry. But anyway, I remember when I got married, though, at our reception, my uncles and even my dad were like high-fiving me and like telling jokes. And now I was like in the married man club. And it was so off-putting. I was so uncomfortable. I was like a fish out of water squirming around because they were now okay with talking about these things. And you'll know, wait till the honeymoon. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been told my entire life this is not okay. What we're talking about here is the cultural norms propagating this problem. It's
sure.
Religious trauma is different because it's not one person doing something bad or something horrible happening that like we all know, oh, that's bad. Religious trauma is perpetrated by the culture itself.
Yeah.
As like everyone, we how do I define this?
It's groupthink, and it's
Groupthink, yeah.
Just so we're very clear, like having a religious culture is not inherently bad. Certainly my life has been made. I met Pete because of my religious culture.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a huge blessing in my life. I met my wife because we went to the same congregation, and a lot of my closest friends, and I have a lot of very close friends who are not the same religion as me. And that's another beautiful thing in my life. And I can't deny that my religion has brought a lot of really amazing things into my life, but I also can't deny that a lot of people have been really hurt by the way the religion treated them. We can talk a lot about the LGBTQ community's relationships with various churches, ours very much included, and the hurt and pain that has caused. And it's a rough thing to have something that can be potentially so beautiful that people use in such a dangerous, mean, condescending, crushing way. I think most religions, if not all religions, can really do a lot better with that. It's an important thing to work on.
And I understand that some of the problems come with the administration of doctrine. You can believe in the doctrines that are taught by your religion, but then part of your religion includes administration and policy and how do we disseminate that doctrine. And the doctrine may not change, but man, those policies end up being very hurtful. Which you're like, what the heck? If God was leading this church, how could he allow this administration, this type of bureaucracy, or this person to be in power or something? And that's a real struggle. Well, before I have a whole ton to say, but one of the things that I wanted to address was the definitions around it. I kind of wanted to get our minds around what religious trauma is opposed to other types. First, if that's all right. You okay with me taking
of course.
it? Okay. So in 2024,
Pete, real quick, we are equal in our hosting. This is your podcast too, man.
I just realized that I talk a whole lot. And so when I go on a spiel and then I look at your beautiful face and you give me that endearing like oh Pete, you're such a sweetheart look in your face. Not that one.
Okay.
Then I'm like, oh shoot, maybe yes. Anyway, cut all that.
No, we'll keep it. They're not going to see the faces I'm making at you. But
I'm going to get a bad comment on YouTube now. Gosh dang it! All right, so this one
attack Pete.
Yeah, my turn. So phenomenology is a phrase that talks about a philosophical approach in focusing and studying the lived experience of a person's life. It's
fun caveat, by the way. I think it tickles me to no end that Pete is using a phenomenological study when phenomenology is like the core of what I studied in college.
Oh my
gosh. I love it. So tell me, Pete, what is phenomenology? Explain it to me.
Well, seriously, I should have turned that over to Taylor. I have to give a lecture on that in a couple weeks on phenomenology.
Really, on phenomenology?
Yeah, I do. Well, a lecture.
Let me give you a really useful nutshell definition of it.
Go for it.
Phenomenology is the study of the experience of a thing, the phenomenon of it. So what does it feel like? How do you experience it? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? The phenomenology of listening to this podcast, for example, if you're driving your car, the phenomenology is the feel of the steering wheel in your hand as you hear the words, the thoughts and feelings that come up in your body, the movement of the car, the sound that is specific to the speakers in your car, or if it's the headphones, the weight of your headphones, or the chair you're sitting in. This is all a phenomenological experiential thing. So a phenomenological inquiry on religious trauma is talking about the lived, felt experience of what it is to have religious trauma.
In social sciences, phenomenology and qualitative research is kind of how we first look at a thing. Like someone had to say that, man, trauma seems to be coming up a lot for people, and or we don't even have a word for it. Just these experiences, this, what do we call it? You know what? We'll get like 10 people together and have them all talk about it and see if we can come up with common things that they talk about, or interview them one at a time. And at a certain point, you'll find out that their narratives start to overlap, and they'll start to talk about certain aspects of this experience that are similar between all their experiences. And that's a qualitative research study. And so you start social work study, and then you're like, oh, they're all mentioning the feeling of the steering wheel as they drive. Let's count that. And then it becomes a whole different type of research. And now you're counting and using numbers and statistical measures.
So qualitative is measuring the quality of something. Quantitative is measuring the numbers of something. And so a qualitative study that becomes quantitative is when you start taking things and saying, how many happiness units is this? Which is always something that I thought is dumb, but I'm also not a scientist. So,
well, let me read some excerpts from this phenomenological study. They used 8 interviews, and these are from people across the United States. And a quote from the study says, "The phenomenon of religious trauma is not well operationalized or understood in empirical literature because trauma is often sheltered within the very cultures in which it's perpetuated. It can be difficult to understand and to research." And this is in 2024. I mean, this is a recent study that said we're having a real hard time noticing this stuff. Marlene Winnell has done extensive work on research on religious trauma. She's a psychotherapist. And she suggested something called a religious trauma syndrome. She defined it as a constellation of symptoms based on authoritarianism and cultural norms that focus on fear and subservience.
And real quick to jump in, there's actually, I don't know if it's specifically because of Marlene's work, but there's a form of OCD that has recently been kind of getting more attention. It's called scrupulosity.
Ooh.
And scrupulosity, OCD, is an obsessive compulsive disorder focused on scrupulously following religious tenets. So it's an overly strong, overwhelming concern with morality and your place within a morality system.
I'm actually relieved to hear that, because as a religious person, as someone who believes that having a strong moral base is healthy, take that for what it's worth. But when people would come and they are obviously exhibiting OCD, and how do you argue with their obsessiveness when it's about saying their prayers every night? And if they don't do it, then that means that they have to say it 3 times the next night or something. Like they can't go to a hotel because it doesn't have whatever they need. And, I just can't. And it impacts their lives in really bad ways. And you're like, okay, like you can loosen up. No, I can't, because I need to be righteous. Like, oh my gosh.
I can't go to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really intense thing that can happen with religion, where people cannot put down the tenets of their religion in any way, shape, or form, because if they do, they're going to hell.
Yes. But that's also administration. That could be practices. And that's really like outside demonstration of your
like you were saying,
connection.
It's hard to argue against somebody's morality as a mental health construct, because they're saying, so what you're telling me is that God doesn't want me to pray? Well, crap. Now God does want you to pray, I guess. Like that's not the argument, but I do think that maybe God doesn't need you to pray 3 times in a row the same prayer, or else he's going to smite you. Or maybe that's the God you believe in, and that's where it gets really complicated again. And they're like, how do I push against this? How do I encourage that?
You go into
what
the
sticky
meaning
thing.
Is your praying every night because you believe that God wants you to talk to him, or because he wants you to pray every night? Like those are 2 very different things.
Mm-hmm. And then there's always the question of our own Judeo-Christian approach to it. And like, maybe they do believe that God wants obedience more than he wants connection, or she, or they, however many. It's a whole thing.
And you can't argue with someone's perception of God, especially in a therapy setting. You're like, okay, is this healthy? Anyway, then there's another clinician, Allison Stone, who later built on Winnell's work. She added the definition, quote, "pervasive psychological damage resulting from religious messages, beliefs, and experiences." So pervasive psychological damage resulting from religious messages, beliefs, and experiences. That seems to fit pretty well, because I think it has to be pervasive, because anything uncomfortable isn't necessarily bad, but if it causes pervasive damage, that's a good definition.
Yeah. And that pervasiveness can be topic specific. Like you talked about your relationship with sex before and after marriage, how you don't have big T trauma, but you have perhaps religious trauma syndrome, because in this one particular thing, it's pervasive as it relates to sex, or maybe it was at some point.
My wife will even report that for the first 3 months of our marriage, she felt like unwanted by me. Like it was bad because I knew that it's better not to have sex than to have sex.
Mhm.
Like I knew that,
And that
to
knowing
be true.
that's a dangerous component that is crucial in the religious traumas. Like I know I'm bad because
Mm-hmm. I knew it was better to be celibate than to have a healthy sexual relationship with my wife. And
yeah.
I can talk, you can logic it away, but in my heart I knew like it was better to be celibate, and I could like indulge. It felt like indulgence being with my wife, not just
Mhm.
sharing something. It was like I'm indulging, which is
Yeah.
it was bad.
This kind of speaks to what part of, and I'm sorry to keep jumping around so much, but this is part of what makes religious trauma so terrible to deal with, is because like trauma can be this terrible thing happened to me, and maybe in some certain kinds of trauma you're like, I caused it, which I don't
Yeah.
subscribe to. But like, you know, if a house burnt down and someone died, it was because you were playing with a lighter. You'd be like, I made a bad thing happen, I did a bad thing, and like that kind of guilt and shame.
That
Religious
compounds
trauma,
it. Yeah.
yeah, but religious trauma is based kind of explicitly in the idea that like you are bad. It's not that a bad thing happened because you did it. It's not because you do bad things. It's because you are bad. You are the bad thing. And there's no separation between you and you. And that starts to leak into everything. If I'm inherently bad, then the things I do are inherently bad. And if the things I do are inherently bad, then I don't have value that I add to the world. If I don't have value, what am I doing here? It's really easy for it to spool up and just completely overrun everything,
Because
it's pretty rough.
Because it ties into the fundamental nature of me. Like it's my belief system. Like I found my life on this thing. It's the foundation of my being, or not my being, but my, like, what do I know is right and wrong is because of my beliefs I was taught. So if these things I find out that I've been doing are actually healthy, that I shouldn't be doing, and actually it's actually a good idea, or the things that I was told to do are actually, no, you probably shouldn't do that, then it's shattering. It's really impacting your life. There's actually a theory called shattered assumptions theory, and it's part of the trauma that avenues I work
That
with.
science I accidentally talked about last week.
Yeah. Shattered assumptions theory. It's basically your moral identity, and everything, and something happened that shatters your understanding of the world. You have these assumptions that you have to base your life on. Actually, a quote from one of these studies: a disruption and subsequent failure of foundational moral beliefs to adequately appraise ethical problems. So what you believed doesn't explain what happened to you, and you can't I hate it when
Reconcile, right?
reconcile. Yes, you can't reconcile the two: what happened to you and what you believe. These two things cannot happen. So your assumptions about the world are shattered. It's called moral injury because your morals have been absolutely rocked foundationally.
Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of like it can behave like I hope this makes sense to people listening. It can behave like a non-Newtonian liquid. And if you don't know what that is, a non-Newtonian liquid is a substance. It's liquid. And the harder you hit it, the more solid it becomes.
Yeah.
And so if you have it, you stick your hand in it slowly, it'll behave like a liquid. But if you hit it real hard, it'll solidify and it'll act like a solid. You can actually crack it until the energy dissipates, and then it turns into a liquid again. And so with some people, when you attack their morals, they solidify. They turn into a very hard, heavy thing. Like, well, I can't even begin to approach this because it's too hard and heavy. So, and maybe this kind of gets into the treatment of religious traumas. Like, you've got to be willing to go slow, soft, and intentional, and get your hand in there. A lot of people get really defensive about religion and trying to talk about any kind of trauma. I guarantee someone will listen to this, or someone will find maybe a clip that'll come out of this and be like, nope, you're bad. I can't believe you would say that religion's bad. Not what we're saying, but you got to be willing to slow the reaction down to understand the dangers of religion being used as a cudgel instead of an enlightening, ennobling thing.
Exactly. When I hear religious leaders speak, whether it's the Pope or somebody of a world religion who speaks, it's usually soft. It's usually like, we invite all people to do this. Like, we want people to, and we know that bad things happen in the world. And anyone who's been through those, quote, bad things, are like, oh, you think? Like, you don't know what bad things are, you in a suit or you in a robe. Like, you don't know where we are down here in the trenches of life. You're so high up there. But I think what they are trying to do is what you're saying is like, we're not going to go into the specifics of what we know, but we will say there are bad things, and we invite you to stay with your morals. And that kind of thing.
Navigate the
Like,
bad things.
navigate the
And then
bad
you
thing.
have the other people too. Like, not to be political too much, but we just witnessed the assassination of Khomeini in Iran, who was a religious leader who I would say probably, pretty frankly, did not do a lot of great things with his religion. My sister-in-law is Iranian, and I know that she is so thrilled that this man who chased her family out of Iran, that is not an invitational religion thing. That is get in your place and shut up religion. And that's not saying Islam is that. It's saying that what Khomeini did was that. Yeah. Those are two very different and important distinctions.
Again, policy versus doctrine. What does your doctrine say versus how is it administered? Another thing coming out of, talking about religious trauma in general, it was an interesting find to me as I'm researching this, that religious trauma is kind of an umbrella term because there are all sorts of different things that are perpetuated by bad people that are then included as religious trauma. In the Mayo Clinic in 2024 said religious trauma could include various aspects of combat exposure, childhood physical abuse, sexual violence, physical assault, being threatened with a weapon, even an accident. Those things could be included in religious trauma. So it seems like religion is the context of the incident, not necessarily the event itself. Because, like we said before, it's the cultural norms that say this is normal. And everything inside of you is saying this is horrible. This is broken. This is awful. And yet somehow someone outside of you is saying, actually, this is what God wants.
Mm-hmm.
And those
and
two
then you're
things.
Like, but yeah, because then you feel like, well, if God wants this and I feel bad, that means that I'm against God and I don't want to be against God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I hope we're really highlighting this is very sticky, dangerous stuff. People say absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that is probably pretty generally true. And the real danger of that is that sometimes people will have power, like a pastor or a clerk or an elder of a church or a whatever, right? And they aren't aware of the weight of the power they carry. And so they just kind of start wielding it a little too willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. And then they hit people in these soft spots of like, like maybe you should have been paying your tithing, or
yeah, maybe
cool. But are you reading your scriptures every night? Like, I don't believe in God anymore. Well, it's because you're not doing the work. And if you're not doing the work and don't feel God's presence in your life, it's because you are failing to meet him where he is. Ooh.
Well, I think that's different. One of the reasons I appreciate religion is it draws my mind to God often. And I know if I don't do the work, then I won't feel that. So I don't.
I got to push against that a little bit. And I want to make sure that what I'm arguing and what you're arguing are on the same track.
Okay.
I'm not saying that approaching your understanding of God to have a stronger connection with it is bad. What I am saying, though, is that the idea that God can't approach us if we're not actively approaching him is dangerous, because any religious faith will have multiple stories of somebody who wasn't expecting to find God and all of a sudden there he was.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. What then the trauma isn't necessarily that like, you're not turning towards God on a regular basis. That's not necessarily traumatic. What is traumatic is when someone comes to you and says, I have these horrible things happen to me. And the response is, well, what have you done? Then that becomes shattered. That's a moral injury. That's like, you're trying to reconcile the horrible things that happen with you with some kind of leader or authority figure. And the risk is they use their power to condemn you and use fear.
Yes.
So it becomes authoritarian.
I feel comfortable. Yeah, I feel comfortable telling this particular story, and I can do it in a HIPAA compliant way. I have a client who, when he was in 4th grade, was at school and there was a lightning storm. This is in the Midwest, so like tornadoes they get big. The storms there get really big. And my client was going to a religious school, and he went to his teacher and he said, I'm scared of the storm. And the teacher's response was, why, did you sin? what this is happening because you're afraid because you're not worthy to be in front of God. And like what that did to him, the idea that his fear was because he wasn't capable of standing in front of God because of some hidden sin he couldn't name. Man, to an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, that just,
Yeah,
that's bad. That's legit bad. And that's not bad because necessarily the question of your relationship with God is not a bad one to ask. Framing it that way for a fourth grader who doesn't understand anything beyond I'm afraid because God doesn't love me. That was his takeaway. I'm very uncomfortable with that.
and I hear that story, and I'm thinking, man, I might have said something like that to one of my. I teach Sunday school, and one of my little kids, if I'm telling a joke and I say, "Why did you sin?" and they look at me wide-eyed and walk away wordlessly, I'm like, "Oh crap!" But I can see some teachers saying that tongue in cheek. I just feel sorry. Like no child escapes childhood unscathed. This is one of those things. Like holy cow, that poor kid.
I feel bad because maybe I'm not portraying the severity of what this did to him strong enough. Because like even if it was said tongue in cheek, he took it seriously, and the thing he took away was I'm inherently bad and weak because this thing is scaring me.
I'm going to get struck by lightning.
Yeah, God is coming for me to punish me for being weak. And and then also well, I can't even name what I could have done. So like, I can't control what it's all of it bad.
Yeah.
It's all bad.
That's using the fear component of religious trauma that someone introduced. Again, like you said, you are bad. Religious trauma tells you you are bad.
Yeah.
And that's the moral injury.
Yeah. Down underneath. So you had, Allison Stone, pervasive psychological damage.
Yeah.
And then you have 4 little bullet points here. And
these were the themes that came out of that study. So I mentioned that we had a phenomenological study done talking about the experiences of people. They had 8 interviews across the United States. And as they talk to those people, you start to find those recurrent themes in what they're talking about that might in the future lead to some kind of numbers research. But in the beginning, we just talk about the experience research. These 4 themes that came across commonly among these interviews was first, altered health outcomes. Second was loss of spirituality. Third, subjugation of self. And fourth, loss of community disenfranchisement. That's loss of community / disenfranchisement. So the first one was pretty interesting because altered health outcomes is based on like religious healing and beliefs. And so if your health has been altered and you believe something that if I'm faithful enough, God will heal me completely, and then he doesn't, nothing happens, and you continue to be damaged, that could lead to moral injury, shattered assumptions, and religious trauma. And that was a common theme. People saying like, this thing didn't happen when he said he would, or I felt like he should. The second, loss of spirituality, that's understandable. I kind of expected that one. That was like, well, if this isn't working, then I'm out. That kind of thing. And
that's a hard one too, because if you come from a community that really values a spiritual connection and you have a hard time accessing that, then there's a division between you and the people around you. Like, well, I feel the Spirit so strongly, it's moving me right now. I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
One of us is wrong, and it's probably me, because you all seem pretty convinced that this is a spiritually moving experience.
Mm-hmm. And you have to define spirituality. Like, I know people who are very religious and yet very pragmatic. Like, they're like, I don't know about the Spirit, but I sure appreciate the doctrine that says these things.
It's a set of things to follow.
Like, I need structure in my life. And, but spirituality, having these huge epiphanies of like knowledge and bursting light in your mind and knowing for sure. When people say
the tears, that's the big one for our religions. People will say, I'm feeling the Spirit, and they just start crying. And so like, if someone starts to cry, they're like, well, they're feeling the Spirit, so I guess I'm supposed to be feeling the Spirit, and I'm not crying. Therefore, do I feel any kind of spiritual connection to God? And yeah, anything that kind of narrows down what your relationship to God is supposed to feel like or be like on an experiential level is stuff that perpetuates, in my opinion, religious trauma.
And you have to define that. I think the cultural norm of like, this is what feeling spiritual looks like. And you're like, well, I get that culturally, but not for me. I've met some guys who are dealing with religion of their parents, and they're like, it makes sense. And that's about as spiritual as I get. It makes sense. And I'll have these understandings and it makes sense. And I try to talk about like, well, how does that feel when it makes sense? And they just are totally like, what do you mean? How does it feel? Like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's all up here. They don't live down here. They live up in their heads, not in their hearts. And I respect that. I'm just not that way. They can, their spirituality is logical, cognitive.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I feel like part of how I've been able to avoid some religious trauma in my life has been because I generally refuse to just accept what people tell me. So my concept of approaching God, maybe this is a little too personal for a podcast about mental health.
No, broadcast to the internet. That's fine.
Who cares? My whole thing is like, I'm approaching the throne of God. And so I need to make sure I know when I'm there. I need to make sure that I know when he's there. And so things that don't work in that context are things that I don't put a lot of attention to. For example, if someone's like, well, you know, you've got to take notes when you go to church on Sunday. If you're not taking notes, you're not in touch with what God wants. Like that doesn't work for me. Or people who say that, like, when I feel spiritually ennobled, I feel like the tears thing again, like giving myself permission to not have to approach the throne of God in a specific way has been a real gift that I've given myself and has kept me safe from a lot of these things that pop up. Because like someone says, well, you need to do this. Like, well, actually that doesn't work for me, but I still feel connected to God. So I guess you're wrong. So maybe it's some arrogance on my part,
a little bit of religious arrogance,
but it has worked really well for me. And I do feel confident, like, again, just on a personal level, if I died right now, one, I'd be very disappointed. Two, I'd be a little nervous because, you know, there's always the what if. But I'd say I'm like 90 to 95% positive that I could stand before God and be like, I did my absolute best to live by my understanding of what you wanted me to do. And I feel supremely confident that he'd be like, you're right. Well done. Which is great.
That's a type of independent spirituality that I think.
Yeah, and it doesn't work for everybody.
No.
Yeah, it's not the way everybody does it, and that is okay too. But that is what has kept me safe personally from religious trauma.
Yeah, religious trauma is really based on authority, like the power of others over you, and we can say that you're wrong and it's your fault and that kind of thing. And
I, in general, don't accept authority being exercised over me,
which is an interesting
time with that. So
interesting. You invited a military member to be your co-host.
I just goes, you know what, Pete? It's because I love you to death, and because I think you're really intelligent and you have great ideas, and I just love you.
No.
Like,
Okay, stop it.
I want to do this with you. No, no, please don't stop. Don't stop. No, I'm doing this with you, Pete, not because I thought that I needed somebody to be a certain way. It was because it was you, and I like you.
Nice.
So I want to do this with you.
Well, speaking of being smart and being an expert, I noticed the last two themes that came out of this qualitative study, this phenomenological study, if you will.
You're almost comfortable saying it. I love it.
Almost, I'm there. Are kind of your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So the last two, subjugation of self and loss of community and disenfranchisement. So the subjugation of self, Pete asked me to explain a little bit more what the self is. And so when we say the subjugation of self, we're talking about the concept of who we are, our individuality, the self, right? Myself. And not myself, like not as one word, but my space self, the self that we inhabit, the self that we put out into the world. So I think if I were to do like an easy definition of what the self is, I would say that the self is our understanding of who we are and our place in the world, our passions, our likes, our dislikes. Who are we? And the subjugation of self is taking who we are and making sure that that thing fits into a box, a specific box. And if it's not in that box, the subjugation is either shoving so it's a tight fit into the box, or cutting pieces off, or breaking off if it's not a clean cut. And again, this is hard because self-betterment as a concept has to include subjugation of the self.
I was just writing a note. How do we encourage change without subjugating ourselves to whatever we want to change to?
And I think the difference between good subjugation of the self and bad subjugation of the self, good subjugation, that's a rough phrase. I think the difference is, are we approaching this from a guilt or shame place? And this is maybe another controversial thing. I love guilt because I define guilt as a recognition that I can do better, but I'm not bad because I didn't do better, right? Like if I'm trying to play a song, and I've done this at shows, right? I'll mess up a song that I wrote. How do you mess up a song that you're the one who wrote it? And I feel bad. Like, dang it, how did I do that? But I don't feel like I'm a bad person that did it. I just go, okay, here's where I am. Next time I would like to be better at this because I can be better. And so that push to be a better version of myself as I understand better to be, that's good subjugation of the self. Bad subjugation of the self is when you're saying, I'm bad because I'm not this thing. And I need to use that me being bad as the driving force. That's the fuel of the change that needs to happen. I'm not a big fan of that because it feels like what you're really doing is taking who you are and denying it in bad ways.
And there's a lot of shame that comes with that, not guilt. In the understanding that shame comes from the outside and guilt comes from the inside.
Yes, I think they're very directional. Shame is inside pushing out, or guilt is inside pushing out, and shame is outside pushing in.
Which is ironic. I lived in Islamic country for a few years, and I've lived around lots of different denominations, and a preeminent doctrine of a lot of religions is love and acceptance, and the deity of whatever religion is about love and helping be better and happiness. And yet the application of that by humans who are in power is like, you're doing it wrong and that is not acceptable. And everything you read from, at least our religion and Islam that I know of is like, be kind. And that's
peace is the goal.
Yeah. Peace. Yeah. It's just crazy that like there's this dichotomy between what you learn and how you practice it with yourself. And so there's a lot of shame, or maybe assumed shame. Maybe you have assumptions of like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Everyone's looking at me a certain way because so I better subjugate myself to whatever I think they think that I should be doing. And then everyone around you is going, oh man, dude, like, just if you pray, if you try to pray, it's not about praying every night. It's just about communicating with God.
It's communion. That's it is. It's an invitation. Before starting this thing, I shared a couple of videos from Pete Holmes, who I really enjoy his comedy. He's not a religious comedian, but he makes jokes about religion. And he quoted the sound guy from AC/DC, or the road manager or whatever, who said that God is the name of the blanket we throw over the mysteries of the universe to give it a shape. And like, I think that's a pretty healthy way of approaching God, right? Like, always true, sometimes really happened. It's metaphor. And that's not to say that there aren't literal truths to be found in religion, but it is to say that we're approaching a mysterious thing, and any kind of hard and fast certainty is, personally, this is a strong feeling I have, becomes dangerous, because then if you don't accept this hard and fast truth, you are bad. I've lost friends over how I feel about trans folks, for example. Basically I was the best man at his wedding. He told me, you're going to hell because you don't think trans people are evil. Well, do you think God's going to be like, oh, you're trans? Ooh, get away from me. It's ridiculous. I have strong feelings. Anyway, so which brings up an important thing in all this, right? So the subjugation of the self. We are two men talking about religion. It needs to be named and stated very explicitly that for a lot of women, religion is subjugation writ large. You are a woman. Your role is to have not power. Your role is to be subject to power. Your role is to not question power. And I know most of the people I know who have been the most hurt by religion are women. And the hurt that they have experienced is very deeply tied to, I'm just a woman in a man's religion.
The cultural norms, the culture that religion perpetrates. That could be true or assumed in really strict cultures. It's very true.
And I would say phenomenologically, there probably isn't a difference if it's true or assumed.
Oh,
if their lived experience of the church, whatever church is, I'm a woman, therefore I'm less than, then whether or not that's what the church is trying to say, that's the way they're living their lives. And so there's no fundamental difference. Which
Especially
is a problem
when you're treating it as a therapist. That's our experience. Someone comes to you and says, this happened. you're like, okay, it happened. Absolutely. 100% believe you. This is the way it happened. This is your experience of it. Therefore it is true.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of talked about before in other episodes of how our job is not to define the reality or the truth for another person. Our job is to work with their experience of it and use that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone does come in and say, I had this kind of experience, this is where it came from, our job is not to talk them out of it. It's to just assume they're telling us the truth.
Yeah.
And
Which
then
I
work with
honestly,
that. And then,
I had a really hard time with when I first started as a therapist. I was a bit more, I wanted proof, like how bad was this? Is this what they really meant? Is kind of my question. Is this what really they meant to do? And I did get in trouble. I ended up there was a lady who was kind of a frequent flyer for our community mental health agency, and she was addicted to meth, and we had a problem with her getting constantly evicted from hotels. We'd try to get community resources to get her into a hotel for a week. They'd find meth in the room and be like, nope, she's out. And then she'd come to us super high or super drunk and just need help. And so I was her therapist for like 6 months, and I came outside once when she was she had a bicycle and just high as a kite, basically couldn't hold a very good conversation. And she was telling me that like it wasn't my meth, it wasn't me. And this has been like a string of incidents. Like she said it wasn't mine in the hotel room. And I would say, well, then whose was it? Whose else was in your room with you? And she's like, I don't know. I don't have to know. And I was like, well, I'm just having a hard time believing you that it wasn't your meth. And that was not productive at all. It didn't help. Like I was trying to present some challenge to her somehow, some helpful thing, but it just like set her off. It wasn't helpful. She's like, I can't believe you don't believe me, blah, blah, blah. And she stumbled off, and, in supervision, and I was talking to my supervisor about this, and she was like, why would you do that?
Like, there are a lot of non-therapists right now who are very confused why what you did was not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, given what we talked about her lived experience of like what she was telling me was like she felt disenfranchised. She's absolutely powerless. She's addicted. And so what is she going to do? She's going to blame it on her addiction. She wasn't there yet. She's not going to say I have a problem and say it was my meth. I made a big mistake. I'm going to try not to do it again. That's way beyond what she was capable of at that point.
Yes. And that highlights a really, I think, big thing, which is that the goal is not to shield people from the truth. Like the goal was for her to go, okay, this was my meth. I made this decision. It was mine. So we're not trying to tell people not to acknowledge the truth, but we are saying, if you truly cannot look at that in the eye right now, I will look at it in the eye for you, and I'll keep my hand on it, and I will try and pull you closer to it. But I'm not going to force you. I can't force you. You have to come to a place where you're willing to look at it.
Yeah. It's like we had this guest named Latina talking about sexual trauma, and she had a grown man, a professional athlete, just a huge man sobbing in her office with his addiction, confessing his addiction, saying, please don't take it from me. And like, of all the things that I can give up, and he started listing off things he could give up, but just don't take this from me. So what do you do as a therapist at that point? You're like, no, we are absolutely going to take this from you. Then you become the enemy and not the addiction.
Yeah. And the way you handle that is you say, at some point you recognize this isn't helping you, so we need to get you ready to put it down. But you're the one who has to let it go. I can't take it from you.
Yep, absolutely. In terms of religious trauma, this could come into play when your culture is still very much in what happened to you. You believe that as a woman, men have complete authority, and yet this bad thing happened to you and it's causing you symptoms, and yet you cannot come to terms with the fact that this authority misused their authority, or that they're bad, that they did something super bad because your culture dictates that they can't, or that they didn't do anything bad. It's your role, whatever, to have something happen. If you're not ready to acknowledge the power disparity or the horror that happened to you, you can't force it by coming to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody who she's a therapist. She treats religious trauma and would openly say that she had her own religious trauma to get through. But we were talking about the concept of Adam and Eve. And I said, well, I think what Eve did was great, because it opened up the way for the world to exist the way it does. And she's like, hang on a sec. Are you saying you don't believe Eve was inherently evil? I was like, no, I don't. In fact, it's a big deal in my religion that she it was a gift.
Yeah.
We call her Mother Eve.
She made a deliberate decision to,
that allowed for the existence of humankind. And she like legit stopped talking for 2 minutes. It's like, I can't believe you're telling me that you are a religion that believes in Jesus and doesn't think that women are inherently the root of all evil. That is correct. That's what I'm telling you. And she could not get over that. And that's some super heavy religious trauma right there of like, that'll mess you up. If your religion is telling you straight up, women are the source of evil. Ooh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of men too. Let's really quickly say this. There are a lot of men who feel like that society is making men to be evil now. And we can't go the other way either. Evil as a concept exists in all of us and we can all access it. But like the idea that men are evil or women are evil are equally pernicious and destructive in a variety of contexts.
You have different aspects of like you be an evil person who is female, be an evil person who is male. We talked about toxic masculinity, and I had a problem with saying that a long time ago, but basically saying that like masculinity is toxic. Through the course of that episode, we're saying, no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying men can be toxic and use their masculinity for evil, or they use it for good.
Like, the need for men to be a certain way, and that if you're not that way is where it becomes toxic. Religious toxicity is that. You are religious, you believe in this religion, you have to be this way, and if you are not, you are evil. And then people think, oh, well, great, now I'm evil in a way that God sees as evil, so I am bad, and it's really not great. It's really not great.
It is not. Part of what made me kind of scared to approach this episode was because religion is your whole moral system, and my moral system, to say good and bad. How do I say what is good and bad? It's a conglomeration of like religious texts and I don't know, old Greek philosophy and social work instruction jostling around in my brain. But in terms of me living my life, I choose to be a certain way. I have to choose certain things to be true, as we all do. You have to, at a certain point, you have to choose based on evidence or your feelings that this is true and I'm going to go that way. So I think religious trauma directly challenges people. That loss of spirituality. No, number two, loss of spirituality was, when you approach religious trauma, you have to come to terms with the fact that these horrible things happen in the context of something that I value, which is really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And one of the ways you kind of work with that is if I feel a loss of spirituality in my religion, then I need to be willing to put down a few things and then pick back up what works for real. And one of those things you might need to put down is your religion. One of them might be a belief in God. One of them might be an understanding of what spirituality actually means. And then you start to re-examine, well, am I actually bad? Does God really think I'm bad? Okay, well, let's work on your relationship with God and talk about what that means to you. Who is God to you? What is God to you? Who are the gods to you if you're a polytheistic believer? Or, there's a lot of ways to approach that, but then you reestablish that connection. And then you ask of that connection, who am I to you? And then you start to build around that concept instead of, this book says I have to do this.
That's recovering from shattered assumptions as you look down on your moral belief system.
Stop bringing science back into this, Pete.
Sorry. All right, fine. Moving on. What's the fourth theme that came out of this qualitative study?
You can keep going. I'm sorry for being a jerk.
No. It's you talked about Newtonian liquid and trying to get into it easily. People who look at their old lives and their old belief system would look at it and be like, that's it. It's all over. It's done. As opposed to, okay, what exactly can I still salvage from this? I still believe in my family. I still believe in love. Love works. I believe that there are good people in the world. But you have to set aside like going to church every week. Even though I'm a good person, I believe there are good people. I just don't want to go there around authority figures or something.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Anyway, that's so shattered assumptions doesn't mean that like the the whole thing is broken. It just means it's come apart.
Well, I think you kind of named a little bit the fourth one there, the loss of community and disenfranchisement. For a lot of people, the fear of examining religion is that's what's at risk. Is like, if I leave this religion, or if I feel like this religion isn't sufficient or doesn't actually accurately, that's the word I'm looking for, portray my relationship with God, I have lost my community and I will be shunned. And there's lots of stories a lot of people have heard of from, I mean, I won't name religions, but you name the religion, there are stories of somebody who has been ostracized because they don't believe in it anymore. That's the risk for people. So it's like, I either have to get in this box and hold on tight, or I risk losing everything my life is built on. All my friends, all my family, it's all at risk. I cannot take that risk. And I have a lot of sympathy for people in that boat. It's like a lot of people say, just leave the religion. You can say that all you want, but until you have to really choose between every person you've ever known in your whole life and not being a part of this religion, that is not an easy decision to come to. That's not an easy decision to live with. And it's hard. It's really, really hard to build yourself up from scratch.
And sometimes
it
comes with a loss of power as well. If you have any kind of standing or acknowledgement as a quote righteous person, that gives you standing. And so this horrible thing happened to you, and you could either ignore it and pretend like it didn't happen and keep going. And if you decide like, I'm going to leave, that means people will start. That means you've lost your position. You've lost where you are. So when I see disenfranchisement, then you start getting into.
Yeah, I have a client who used to be a pastor who left his he's not a pastor anymore. And for years after he left his congregation, people in the supermarket would stop him and tell him he was a bad person.
Whoa, holy cow.
Like we're talking about, especially in places where there's a lot of same religious community, it's dangerous. Dang. From a personal understanding of yourself. Are you willing to be stopped by people in the grocery store and have them tell you you're a bad person? Because that's what's at risk for some people in tight-knit communities in certain places in the country. Like if you're in a super Catholic area, it's not going to be pleasant. If you're in Utah, oh my goodness gracious.
That's or you're in New York and you're Jewish.
Yeah, the Jewish community. I mean, I know people who left their the Islamic faith who like super ostracized. Like there's real risk, and it's not just I'm walking away. It's opening up the door to let people. Let is a strong word, but to have people come up to you and confront you and say, you left this, you are bad, and you need to know in a public way you are bad. That's big T trauma. Even if it doesn't feel like it at the beginning, I'll tell you what, man, 5 years of that will drive anybody a little crazy.
What is that phrase again? Pervasive psychological damage.
Yeah.
Resulting from religious messages.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about what's wrong with religion.
Well, I think that's kind of our topic was religious trauma, and it comes from the bad parts of religion. Yeah. And I think it's not necessarily the bad parts. Sorry, I misspoke. It's not the bad parts of religion. It's people using the umbrella of the culture to perpetuate trauma, to perpetuate evil deeds, and they'll use their position of power or the culture that tells their victims a certain thing, and you will have some kind of trauma under the umbrella of religion. So I think trauma then is the context of the incident, not the incident itself.
Yes. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And through all this, I imagine there are maybe some people who are listening who are like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I know some of the people who I'm friends with who are very religious who might be like, well, if somebody leaves the religion and they believe things that I think are actively harming my family, if they're like approaching my kids and telling them, hey, you know what, you should go get drunk this weekend. You only live once. It doesn't matter. I don't want to have that in my life. And so you start having the other side of this, which is saying I'm trying to protect a religious construct. I don't need people coming up to me and saying, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, because I don't believe that. I don't want my kids to believe that. And I feel a need to protect them from these potentially dangerous influences. It's how do we do that? And I don't know that we have time to really go into that in this episode, But I guess I just kind of want to name the other side of this, which is there are people who are doing their best to live a religion because they believe in it, and it requires some strictures, which need to be taken into consideration. And I don't know that we have time to really answer that today, but I just want to plant that seed.
Well, two things. You kind of hit on it, and we might hit on it. We might talk about it later. How to overcome any kind of power dynamic. Maybe it's religious, or maybe it's political, or something. What do you do now? You've been hit in the face by something that you're powerless to change. What do you do now? Two things that came to mind was one that you said was introduce flexibility. What if you said something like, "I love the Constitution and I hate America," where it is right now? Something like that. With some kind of like cognitive flexibility that makes people stop. Like for me, I tell people, well, I'm a financial conservative and I'm a social liberal. And they're like, well, you can't do that.
Well, like, apparently I can.
Yeah, I can. I defined it. So introduce some flexibility so that if somebody in power does something bad, you can say, wow, this church is amazing and you are horrible, instead of having all or nothing. Like, I had great experiences here and now I'm having a horrible experience here. That flexibility is really hard. Kids, I tell people kids think in black and white. Children are easy. We need a good guy and a bad guy in movies, so it's easy to digest. And kids think in black and white too. So even as an adults, we want to think all good and all bad. It's just easier. It's just easy. So introducing flexibility challenges that. It's hard, but it helps. Second one was communication. I was thinking about my kids and adults too. If things happen, you talk about it to get bearings on what happened. And you may, as Taylor has done, give context that is shocking to the person. That's like, wow, you just said this thing. You are so boring. Or like, you are really annoying right now. Like, you give context, the person listening to you will give additional context to what you said, because your assumptions and your culture and everything says one thing. So when you communicate, you get the input from someone else. And I think that's really valuable. So I know we're not going to go too far into it. The two things right off the dome were flexibility and communication.
And I appreciate you using the word dome, because that is what your head looks like.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Before we go, the final thing that I, again, don't have time to really go into, but Pete and I think are safe to say both pro-religion.
Yes.
And so I think that there's assumptions that need to be made there. And one of them is we do believe that there is a line between overbearing and ennobling religion, that religion is not bad, that religion can do bad things and can be bad, but religion as a thing by itself is not bad. And so maybe where is the line between an overbearing religion and an ennobling religion? Because again, the subjugation of the self, right? The becoming a better person requires some kind of constraint. I can't just sit and eat gummy bears all day, no matter how much I really want to.
That would be like saying
not good for me.
Authority is bad, or like music is bad, math is bad, or something.
Yeah,
you should say, well, yeah, education, like going to education is bad. Authority,
because math is bad, Kenneth.
when
it's not bad. I love you very much, my friend.
Oh yeah, freaking Kenneth.
Kenneth is a good man.
Authority is used improperly, it can be bad in that context. So yeah, religion is its own thing.
I feel like maybe one of the good guiding stones or touch points is based on the idea that if it can't be questioned, it's probably a little dangerous to get too close to.
Yes, yeah.
You know, if God is, and this is my personal belief, and this is reflected of my understanding of my religion, and so if this does or does not reflect your religion, I'm not saying this is a universal statement, but for me, my belief is that God is all powerful and all knowing, and God wants to be known, and God wants to know me. And if that's the case, I'm allowed to question and say, where are you? How are you making yourself known to me? And that is the core of where I begin to grow my religious faith. If your religion doesn't allow you to ask questions like, well, why can't this? Or where is the unknown? Not that it's going to give you answers to every question, but being able to approach it with a question in your heart that's what faith is. Faith is not knowing. Faith is questioning. If you cannot question, then you can't have faith. That is something to pay attention to. I can't question this religion without real danger. That might be a bad sign. And that might not, maybe that's not the religion. Maybe that's the family. Maybe that's the community. Maybe that's a whole slew of things that's indicating is problematic. But if you can't question, I would encourage you to pay attention to the things that you are not allowed to question and really question those.
Well, that was a little touchy, not as painful an episode as I thought it was going to be. I'm actually really grateful that we got to explore this.
Yes, I have one more line I want to say. Religion should be an invitation to more. It should not be proof that you deserve less, right? Religion is a growth. It's reaching upwards. It's expansion. It should not be, I think, crushing and dismissive and what's the word? Where you take something and you smash it down into a small space.
Compact.
Thank you. Religion should not be a compact experience. And if it is, pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming along with us. If you made it this far, please drop us a like, comment, and subscribe. Send. You can make fun of me this time.
Yes.
Taylor's had enough.
Yes. I've gotten all the insults. Imagine being such a failure, Pete, that you would argue against self-control. What have I done with my life to be such a failure?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I knew the whole episode was you arguing against self-control. That was what that was your point, actually. Everyone should just do whatever they wanted all the time. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'm sorry you put forth you were the brunt of that one.
That's okay. It genuinely made me laugh, and it brings me a legitimate joy and tickle in my heart.
All right. Well, send us a email, emotionalmenpc@gmail.com, or
tell us how Pete ruined this one.
Oh yeah, do that. Anyway, thanks.
Let Pete be the one. Anyway,
love you,
Pete,
Taylor.
Love you too, man. I'll talk to you later, man.
Bye.